Today I'm gonna tell you how, with nothing but a bucket of silicon and a handful of electronics, one eccentric artist and an adventurous crypto speculator built a tech company and raked in $80 million. We'll break it all down, take a look, get hands-on. Look under the hood and dive into the wildest project I have ever come across. I found this story while I was researching sex tech for the Pro Robots channel. By the way, that's my debut over there, so please go support it. Links will be at the end. But honestly, it just blew my mind how two oddballs turned the sex industry upside down, conquered global tech expos using parts from a cheap toy car, and without a single industrial machine are giving giant Chinese factories absolute nightmares. It all started with this guy, Matt McMullen, an artist and sculptor from California. Growing up, he was absolutely obsessed with movies, especially the process of creating monsters, dinosaurs, and all kinds of creatures. Back then, CGI wasn't really a thing yet. The classics we loved were built by hand by practical effects artists, and Matt was totally into it. He spent a ton of time sculpting and building all kinds of monsters, so when the time came, of course, he headed to the film industry. Once there, he had to scrape by working at small studios, making masks and mannequins for low-budget horror movies. Breaking into the movie industry was hard even back then. Special effects masters were pretty badass guys. To bring a monster to life on screen, you had to be an artist, a sculptor, and a mechanic all at once. But the problem was, there were almost as many effects guys as there were wannabe actors chasing fame. So Matt stuck to big great horror films and even took side jobs doing Halloween masks. Now, what's the one thing every low-budget horror movie has to include, besides zombies? Exactly, beautiful girls getting torn apart by those zombies on camera. And of course, that meant more masks, more prosthetics, more fake bodies, the exact stuff Matt was making. One day, he posted photos of one of the girls on an online forum, hoping it might lead to a better job. But instead of serious offers, he started getting some very weird messages. And I think you can already guess what kind.
Nice.
Aside from standard what material is that and wow, so cool, a lot of people were interested in physical accuracy, like what did the breast feel like and what was under the skirt. Some straight up asked him to make one for them, but with the necessary holes for their intended purpose. At first, Matt brushed it off, thinking it was just internet freaks or trolls, but the emails kept piling up. And more importantly, people started offering serious money. Back then, inflatable sex dolls were about as arousing as balloons at a kid's birthday party. Meanwhile, Hollywood was already going all in on silicone. Remember that woman from Total Recall with the unusual anatomy? A lot of people think the makeup team only added the middle breast. But in reality, all three were prosthetics. That same actress appeared in Star Trek, where you can see her natural chest is much more modest. You can imagine the kind of excitement this caused compared to those junky inflatable dolls. Matt realized he'd stumbled onto something a lot more interesting than Halloween masks. He took first 5 orders, got the deposits, bought materials, quit his job, and started making silicone women right in his garage. And the process is actually pretty interesting. First things first, you need a female body. In Hollywood, they take casts directly from actors. Brush in silicone, build a rigid shell out of plaster or plastic, and you're done. That's how you get ultra-realistic makeup effects or even clone props. But there's a problem. First, not everyone looks like a Hollywood actress. And second, even if you find a beautiful model, it still won't work. You can cast a face, a butt, and other firmer areas, but softer parts just second spread out, especially if you slap on a heavy layer of silicone. The end result looks pretty sad and droopy, and nobody would want to buy that. So the body had to be sculpted from scratch. And since Matt was a sculptor, that part wasn't hard for him. Pretty quickly he built a model with the right sex doll proportions, plus a few important technical details. But for now it's still just clay. To turn it into a silicone doll, you need a mold you can pour silicone into. I once filmed how we made a mold of a pickle Rick. It was the same process. First First, we sculpted the model. Then we built a retaining wall around it and applied a thin layer of silicone. On top of that, we made a hard plaster shell. Then we took it apart and did the exact same thing for the other side. The result was two-part mold like this, which you can pour plastic into to get your cast parts. But sex dolls are made from a soft material, so they don't need that silicone skin layer in the mold. So they simply cover the model directly in fiberglass to create a mold like this. And yeah, it's rigid, but that's fine, cause silicone is flexible. Whatever weird shape you can dream up, you can still pull it out.
Nice.
But here we run into another problem. In Harry Potter, you can clearly see how a silicone cast hand behaves. It looks more like a blob of jelly than a real human limb. To prevent this, movies use movable skeletons or armatures. They use them for everything from giant 5-meter monsters to the tiny figures used to film countless masterpieces. One of my favorites is The Nightmare Before Christmas, which was shot entirely in stop motion and took more than 3 years just to animate all the puppets. Embedding a movable skeleton into a body is pretty simple. You place the armature inside the mold, pour in the silicone, and once it cures, you get a limb that bends and moves like the real thing. Matt took this principle and simplified it. For the fingers, they just inserted wire, and the main skeleton was assembled from PVC pipes to keep the structure light. For the joints, the patent lists friction hinges. Translation for non-engineers: it's two parts tightened together with a bolt. That's it. The tighter you screw it, the stiffer the limb moves. Those white inserts are made from polyurethane foam. You know that spray foam they use to seal windows? That's the stuff. It's light and bulky because of its porous structure, which allows the girls to drop their weight down to 30 kilos, so you can actually manage to move them around. Except here, they don't use a spray can, but a liquid two-part compound. You mix it up, the goo starts to bubble, expand and harden. You can put it into a mold and get a dense, practically weightless part in the exact shape you need. Matt borrowed this trick from the movie industry too. They often use foam rubber and similar materials to fill out creature bodies. This skeleton gets placed into the mold, covered with the second half and tightened down with clamps so it doesn't go anywhere. Then you're ready to pour the silicone. Usually they use something like dragon skin or EcoFlex medium softness from Smooth On. It's a two-part mix. You measure out part A, weight part B, add pigment to taste, mix it all up and put it into the mold straight from the bucket. Once it cures, everything sticks together tight, so they use a jack to separate the two halves of the mold, then carefully pull the casting out without damaging anything. After casting, you have to clean up the seams, trim the excess wire on the fingers and patch up the left holes behind, using that same silicone.
That wire looks kinda dangerous.
Yeah, if you squeeze the finger too hard, it easily pokes through the silicone first and then through you.
Noted. Don't press on the fingers.
You're probably wondering how they create those working holes. See this thing? That's the rear entry, inside out so to speak. They insert a plug with anatomical curves into the mold before pouring. Then once the silicone cures, they simply pull it out, leaving a proper cavity with a nice internal texture.
I'm a doctor, but I'm pretty sure that's not what the inside looks like.
You haven't seen the front yet. And the front is even more interesting. It's a larger cavity where they insert a removable cartridge. These cartridges come in different shapes and textures, and at the end of the day, it's just a piece of silicone which makes it easy to wash, swap out, and replace as it wears out. Basically the same plug, just with an extension.
Okay, now I'm curious. Is the mouth functional too?
Yeah, but with a catch. The mouth is also a separate insert. It casts in multiple silicone pieces, including the teeth. And I didn't think I need to explain why those are soft too. Then everything gets glued together and fitted into a plastic skull. And honestly, it looks pretty convincing. The lipstick and the rest of the bottle makeup are applied with an airbrush using special paints. Even though it looks like normal makeup, it's actually permanent silicone pigment made specifically for film style effects makeup, and it costs a small fortune. And speaking of money, here's what Matt's cost breakdown looks like. The skeleton plus materials and labor would run about $200. polyurethane foam. It takes up about 40% of the body volume. Accounting for expansion, you need around 5 kilos. That'll set you back $50, but it saves a ton on the next component. Silicon. Since part of the body is already filled with foam, you need about 30 kilograms, which comes out to roughly 800. Without the foam, it'd be about twice as much, so fair enough. You'll have to shell out up to $100 for a decent wig. If you want to save money, leave her bald. I don't judge. Eyes prosthetics are another 50. Then again, if you never open your eyes, you could skip. But don't cheap out on cosmetics, trust me. Without camouflage, that raw silicone casting probably won't look great. For makeup, false lashes and a manicure, go ahead and add another $50. For consumables like glue, pigments and other odds and ends, let's say 100, just to be safe. And since we're business people here, we need to write off depreciation. Unlike silicone molds, which degrade from polymers and shrink over time, a plastic mold is practically eternal. But for the sake of propriety, let's throw in a tenner. So even if you round up, the cost per doll still stays under about $1,500. Matt was selling them for $5,000, so that's roughly $3,500 profit per doll. According to him, it took about 8 days to make one, which means you could pull in about $10,500 a month in pure profit just sitting in your garage. If that doesn't sound like much for a business, just compare. In the 90s, the average pre-tax salary in California was around $30,000 a year. Matt was making that much in just 3 months. He kept taking orders, posting photos and getting more orders. The key feature of the business was customization. Clients could send in any request. People finally had the chance not just to get the woman of their dreams, but to bang absolutely anything they wanted. Elves, orcs, aliens. I even found a demoness on one of the sites where doll fans share their homemade content. But then something happened that changed everything. In 1997, Matt officially registered his brand Real Doll, and soon after he got invited to the Howard Stern show. At the time, Stern was one of the most popular and influential radio hosts in the US. His show was syndicated on dozens of stations across America, and there was a daily televised version on cable. And here comes Matt, bursting onto the scene with his sex dolls. For that era, it wasn't just bold, it was insanely bold. Liberals were thrilled, conservatives were furious. All of this drew a ton of attention, but most importantly, a ton of new orders. As Matt himself wrote on Reddit,
I started the company out of my garage in 1997. We were spotted by Howard Stern shortly thereafter, and the rest is a blur.
The company scaled up to producing 300 dolls a year, with some custom orders costing as much as $50,000. Matt hired a couple of workers and rented a space that wasn't much bigger than his old garage. He wrote that the entire production facility, office included, fit into a room smaller than a basketball court. Models were stored hanging from the ceiling to save space, and Matt's desk was packed to the brim with junk. I love how obsessively they label the nipple styles. Not just numbers, but actual names like Hot Red or Big Mama. Honestly, I could stare at workshops like this forever and spot all the little details. Dildos hanging off the shelves, a cut-off boob used as a pin cushion.
Why did I need so many pins?
To mark defects. You get little air bubble and casting mistakes after pouring. They stick tailor pins into the problem spots, and those colored heads make it super easy to find every hole when you're patching things up. By the 2010s, Matt started running into serious problems. China struck back. Despite how simple Real Doll might look from the outside, it turned out to be pretty hard to copy. A highly customized product, lots of artistic work, and a small, flexible workshop don't translate well into giant factory pipelines. So the Chinese decided if they couldn't match the same quality and uniqueness, they'd crush everyone with the price and chic, going with the classic, the bigger, the better. They made the skeleton solid metal. Why bother inserting new PVC pipes shapes and waste in balls. Meh. Just weld a bunch of steel tubes together and boom, done. The expensive silicone got replaced too. Sex doll made of high-quality, soft and safe TPE material. Behind that name hides thermoplastic elastomer. In reality, it's a hellish brew of God knows what. Usually it's a mix of polypropylene with some elastic components, like styrene, ethylene, butadiene, styrene. Anyone who's ever patched a car body with polyester resin will remember the smell. That was styrene, nasty, toxic stuff.
So, is the PP going to fall off?
It shouldn't. In elastomer, it's all chemically bonded. Only if they really messed up the raw mix.
So basically, if it reeks of styrene, don't stick it in.
Yeah, generally speaking, don't stick it anywhere that smells funny. TPE is melted usually around 200 degrees Celsius and poured into molds. It's cheap, easy to work with, and any scraps or failed parts can be just remelted and reused. All these optimizations brought the price down by about 5 times. Only downside, the dolls looked pretty cursed, overinflated proportions and unnatural skin. But over time, Chinese factories also mastered silicone, and the skin texture and tiny details became so realistic that sometimes it's generally hard to tell a doll from a real person. They also leveled up in customization. Now buyers have tons of parameters to choose from. They won't just sculpt your dream woman, they make literally anything, from aliens and furry stuff to Disney heroes and other pop culture characters. Copyright law is, let's say, not their biggest concern. Matt realized he had to do something before China crushed his business, and the solution came from this unassuming couple.
Are you guys partners?
No, we're married.
Oh shit, I didn't know.
Yeah. Around that time, voice assistants were taking off. Siri had already made a splash, Google Assistant was out there, and even Microsoft jumped in with Cortana. And in Hollywood, beyond just silicone, animatronics were huge. Matt realized that if he could combine the two and teach sex dolls to move and speak, it would be a total game changer. He started experimenting.
We are working on integrating technology with our dolls and in various ways.
But progress was slow, until that very couple got in touch with him and suggested building a robot. Yup, just like that. Susan and Kino were engineers with experience at IBM, Motorola, and hands-on robotics. For those who don't know, that's the company behind the famous robot Sophia, the one they show onto every TV talk show. For Matt, this was his chance.
And then I said, well, whatever you guys are doing, I'll be happy to contribute and send you some extra parts and pieces.
He made a custom doll specifically for them with tubing running directly inside the silicone. That allowed them to thread sensor through, like these ones, to detect touch in the robot's erogenous zones. The computer could then pick up those signals and trigger the appropriate expression. Soon they showed the first results.
Well, like head with a computer in it. And it was cool enough that I said, all right, I'm gonna totally work with these guys.
And there is how the Realbotics division was born. In 2018, Matt presents a prototype at the CES exhibition in Las Vegas. It was a head that could move, blink, and speak.
Hello, and good afternoon.
And all the settings were controlled through a mobile app. Naturally, it generated a ton of hype, drew media attention, and brought in the pre-orders for future robots.
I've already ordered enough to start building maybe 20 of them, and we have pre-orders at least that many.
The head consists of plastic skull with all the mechanics hidden inside, and the skin stretched over the top. At first, the faces were attached with a standard Velcro, but even the slightest shift made him look wonky, so they later switched to the magnetic mount. I think it's pointless to mention that magnets have been used in movie animatronics for ages, and Matt didn't exactly reinvent the wheel here. But he did successfully patent it. Inside, there is a simple computer like Raspberry Pi and a handful of servo motors. And honestly, that's pretty much all you need to build this kind of miracle of technology. You make a frame, mount the motors, and run wires with little magnets on the end that pull on the silicone skin to create facial expressions. The only thing left is to program the movement. Humans don't actually have that many basic emotions, so in animatronics, besides the neutral poker face, they usually stick to things like joy, anger, surprise, fear, sadness, disgust, and interest. Our robot probably shouldn't learn all of those, so we can trim the list. Real dolls themselves really only use 4 base reactions. In the first version, there were literally just 2 channels for lifting the eyebrows and 2 more for corners of the mouth. In the newer versions, they added 4 more actuators, and the facial animation got a bit better. Will Cogley runs a channel where he's building a similar open source project, and honestly, his robot has even cooler functionality than real dolls. You can print all the assembly parts on a 3D printer, and he even showed how to make silicone skin with magnetic mounts. And essentially, that's where the robotization ended. Matt literally just built a head, and that's it.
The idea that someone who already owned a real doll could buy an adapter and attach this head to it.
That kind of upgrade became possible thanks to the original neck mount design, and it also let him start charging twice as much money. Now, a fully equipped doll, including shipping, will cost you around $12,000, while the head upgrade alone is about $5,000. Not a bad markup for dozen servos, right? But that's not all. For the robot to deign to speak to you, you'll need the proprietary app. It's based on AI/ML, the same tech used to create the ancient chatbot Mitsuko back in the 2000s. You could chat with it, tell jokes, and even flirt. The answers were assembled from a massive database of template phrases for various life situations, and the bot could even remember info about the user. Real Doll pitches this as a breakthrough technology. You can still touch this little piece of history at Cookie Eye. It's the same vintage chatbot, and honestly, it still holds up surprisingly well. Subscription for this beauty will cost you $29.99 a month. The guys are making some serious bank on an old chatbot. Chinese manufacturers were not thrilled about that level of audacity, and they started cramming their robots with anything they could get their hands on. All kinds of body sensors, little modules with speakers and accelerometers that react to shaking. Some of them could even talk reasonably well.
Hello, Claire. How are you today?
Oh, hello there, dear. I'm doing just fine.
Of course, vibrators pretty much everywhere their imagination allowed. To simulate oral sex, they added small vacuum pumps. They even managed to hook them up to the lower holes, teaching the robot to warm breathe so well that any Tibetan guru would be jealous. Sorry, I can't really show that here, but uncensored footage is already up for my Patreon subscribers. The Chinese even taught the robots to move. Not well exactly. Sex robots generally have a huge issue with motors. They don't like being twisted or shaken, which is, let's be real, the main thing people do with these robots. So the range of motion is limited and the movements are pretty simple. And yet, now the robot doesn't just lie there in anticipation, but actually takes an active part in the process. And some models at trade shows are mastering straight-up acrobatic feats and are starting to genuinely surprise people. Matt realized that at this rate he wouldn't be able to compete with the Chinese for long. There are a ton of them, they have entire factories, and their imagination is even wilder than his. He had to do something. Grow, expand the company, set up proper R&D and marketing departments, and reach a serious level. But sex robots are, let's be honest, a niche product. Sure, there are plenty of crazy fans willing to pay good money for a bucket of silicone shaped like the woman of their dreams. But over 30 years of work, Matt had already supplied most of them, and clients weren't exactly rushing to build a harem at home. He needed to come up with something interesting or find a totally different, more mass-market product. Experimenting further with motors for sex dolls was pointless. It's hard and expensive to make them reliable under such harsh operating conditions. Then Matt had a genius idea. You can do more with women than just sleep with them.
What a twist!
So he decided to make robots for social tasks. Customer service, entertainment, healthcare, and just companion robots for the elderly, the disabled, or simply the lonely.
In a day and age where loneliness is a very big epidemic.
Anywhere you currently see a cute female consultant smiling at you, she can be replaced by an equally cute but silicone one. It grabs customer attention and helps save on salaries, vacation pay, and sick leave. Looks like a great offer. There's just one problem. Matt's robots can basically only blink and turn their heads. Building a truly general-purpose humanoid robot is hard. Just ask Elon Musk. Matt dives into development, and together with his engineering team, they simplify everything that can be simplified. Is bipedal walking hard for a robot? To hell with the walking! Put it on a platform with wheels, let it roll, or just have it stand on a base. Why does a receptionist need to walk anywhere? That's roughly how the first prototypes came together. Same basic servos, same simple low-tech solutions. Yes, robot moves like permanently drunk Captain Jack Sparrow. But come on, that didn't stop Pirates of the Caribbean from making bank, so why should it stop Matt? The problem is, even with all that cost cutting, it still wasn't enough. The company's annual revenue was around $4 million, but the robotics direction alone needed much bigger investments to really take off. Matt realized that if he didn't find the money, the Chinese would crush him and the project would be toast. And here comes our second character, Andrew Kiguel. He spent over 20 years in investment banking, overseeing the tech sector. On 2017, Bitcoin really started to blow up. It had been around for a while, but that year the price jumped from about $1,000 to nearly $19,000 in just 12 months. And everyone suddenly wouldn't shut up about it. You basically weren't cool if you didn't get into crypto. Riding that hype wave, Andrew and his partners launched hot Mining, one of the largest publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies in North America. But crypto is a stressful game. So he stepped down as a CEO in 2020 while the company was still afloat and generating steady revenue, and switched gears to the next big hype. With a different crew, he founded his own investment fund, tokens.com. And where do you think they invested? They snapped up 50% of the shares in the Metaverse Group. That's a Canadian company dealing in real estate inside virtual worlds. Remember those metaverses Zuckerberg wouldn't stop talking about, and that everyone has kind of quietly forgotten since? Yeah, these guys plan to flip property inside those. Then they launched an entire division dedicated to NFTs. They even bought a service called Coco NFT that lets you turn Instagram posts into NFT tokens you can then sell. Long story short, the NFT bubble popped right after the metaverses, and most of Andrew's investments didn't bring the expected returns. Luckily, his company was public. Thanks to the hype, people were buying their stock and they managed to survive somehow. But in 2022, everything changes. Andrew met Matt and things get wild. Around the same time, Musk unveils his Optimus, and the Chinese are cracking out new robots models faster than smartphones. So yeah, perfect timing to jump into a brand new bubble. Andrew liked Matt's idea of universal robots so much that he renamed tokens.com into robotics and took the CEO role, while Matt moved into the COO seat. Then the company went public on the Canadian exchange under the ticker XBOT with a market cap of about $80 million. Matt got 15% of the company, almost $9 million worth of stock, and he already had around $10 million stacked away in various assets, including Ethereum. Meanwhile, Chinese competitors try to grab their share of the market. EX Robot also makes pretty decent assistant robots and tries to stand out with tech. They started 3D scanning real women, achieved insane detail, and 3D print robot bodies. It sounds and looks impressive, but in reality those liquid photopolymer resins used in 3D printers, while great for smooth surfaces, still lag behind silicon in mechanical properties. So the faces look realistic, but don't stretch well and end up more like a tight bag pulled over the mechanics. Some even managed to stick a sex doll on mobile platform and drive it around. I don't know how Matt's story will end, but unlike Musk, his robot's already been sold. I contacted them pretending to be a buyer with very specific requests, and they quoted me $240,000 for a custom model on a powered mobile base. And yet they still refuse to install sex modules in that robot, even for extra money. I tried. And if you want to support my work, drop a comment, hit like, or check out my Patreon, where I'll be posting the uncensored version of this video. Bye!